I know you wanted me to unmute.
Yes, now we hear you.
Yes, but when I clicked the unmute, everything disappeared and I'm having to join again. I am sorry.
Oh, you're here. You're still on.
I can't tell it.
Yeah, we see you. We hear you. It may have moved. Your screen may have moved.
Okay, well, I will simply move forward and say, I'm here to greet you with our Indiana Jones theme. And if you look past me, you see I have found the treasure chest with things that will enable us as we record the adventure. Now, some of you, probably a bunch of you, are about to say to yourselves, oh gosh, now I have to hear about secretarial duties. I don't know. I don't need to know how to do this. That's just the secretary's job. Well, no, 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 no. You all need to hear this. The information applies to all of you, and then certainly to presidents as much as secretaries. You're important to learn. So I know you've just had lunch, so don't fall asleep because you've had lunch. We're going to continue on. I want to share with you as I begin this session, something that, as you all can tell from my introduction to this, I'm not real good at this technology, but I have, it probably will show it better if I take it out of this shiny sheet. Plastic holder. A saying that is very important to me. Say yes to new adventures. When I was visiting with daughter and granddaughters a while ago, we were having a bit of quiet time and we were all coloring in a book with various sayings. I started this and I decided it was important enough that I brought it back with me. And once completed, I put it in that plastic stand-up type of frame, and it is sitting on a bookshelf that when I walk into the study to go to the desk, I see that. And it is very affirming to me to say yes to new adventures. That it certainly includes DKG adventures with my chapter, the state, internationally, but it applies to so many areas in my life. I live alone and have for many years following the death of my husband. And sometimes it's really hard to go out and do some things by myself where it looks to me like everybody is with family, mine's out of town, or with a close friend or a spouse. And reminding myself to say yes to new adventures has really helped me to stretch myself, find new endeavors, and do some great things. And I hope that you will become inspired to try new adventures and encourage your chapter members to do that as well. I want to begin by reminding us of the duties of the Delta Kappa Gamma Society Secretary, as stated in the handbook of the Delta Kappa Gamma Society Handbook. Main one is to maintain written records for the chapter files. Secondly, record the minutes of each chapter and executive board meeting, including any membership terminations and other official actions. And when we record that a member has terminated her membership, we also include the reason for that. Third, we make available to members the minutes of the previous meeting. And fourth, we file official minutes in a permanent chapter file after indicating the date that the minutes were approved. And we note that with signatures or initials. So, okay, how's your chapter doing with those responsibilities? I'm guessing there's probably pretty good. Maybe improve the reporting of terminating membership and the reason. That seems to be an area that we fall short on. We note when we have new members come in, it's equally as important that we note when a member leaves us for whatever reason. And then make sure that there is a permanent chapter file of minutes and that your officers know where they are. But let's wait, there are some fine tuning points that we will review today. I think that the biggest and most important point is that minutes record what was done, not what was said. Let me repeat that. Minutes record what was done, not what was said. We don't have to discuss that all of these extra points are there. It is what actually occurs that matters, and that they are the official record of the proceedings. So they record the business of the meeting, not the discussion, not opinions, but the business of the meeting. Now, you'll begin by using the agenda as a guide. I hope that you have an agenda for your meeting. I could see that maybe in some smaller chapters, you may not have that agenda, but I bet your president still has a list of the things she is wanting to cover in that meeting. If so, ask her for that. Now, there are several things you can do. You could write on that agenda the business that occurs, or you could number some of those items and use a legal pad, a pad of paper, and put your number there and record what might have happened with that, so that when you go back, you'll be able to put that business in that proper area. And then presidents, if you're using a more complete agenda, those things you want to remember to say, the people you want to recognize, those lists of things, share it with your secretary. Don't leave her stranded there trying to quickly write all those names down or that extra bit of business. If your president doesn't readily share that with you, a few days before the meeting, contact that president and ask her to make a copy for you so that your life is easier. It really will help you. Now, the opening paragraph will include the kind of meeting. Is it a monthly meeting, a business meeting, an executive board meeting? Note the date, the time and place of the meeting, and the opening paragraph will also include the presence of the president and the secretary. Now, should the president not be there, our chapters have a designated listing of who would take her place, and you would note that. If your secretary is not there, you would need a secretary pro tem. And back to my treasure chest. Whoops, wrong side. Robert's Rules of Order, Joyce spoke about that earlier, tells us that we need to elect or vote on, approve the appointment of a secretary pro tem. but you would note that in your minutes. Let's see. We have taken care of that. Many of our meetings begin with a welcome, reflections, inspiration, news of members, all before our actual business meeting begins. Dispense of that very quickly in your minutes with names, title of a reading. Don't give a summary of it, just the title is sufficient. And if you have printed out the minutes of the Omega meeting that were that were listed under materials for today, you will see how that was done. I have tried to include on this all these do's and don'ts. And most of the things I'm going to tell you are also on this list of duties of a Delta Kappa Gamma secretary. And as you read through them, you can look and see, that's what she meant. There it is. This is how I could do this. I will comment on the fact that last summer at the Detroit conference, first of all, I attended a parliamentarian training session. And then I also, and that was a full day with material that we had reviewed even before coming together. And then I also attended a session called The Magic of Minutes. So these ideas, suggestions, information are really coming from a higher source than me, but I am very glad to share them with you. I have found a lot of use of my own Roberts rules in brief that Joyce mentioned. And then because I became more interested in the whole proceedings, I too now have the big book because sometimes I want to read up a little bit further, and that's helpful. But I think for most of us, this small one, the Roberts Rules of Order in brief are sufficient. Okay, let's go on to the minutes of the previous meeting. Given the availability and the ease of distributing minutes electronically, which we can do through email, constant contact, these means members have the opportunity to read and review the minutes prior to the meeting. Many organizations have readers of the minutes who have reviewed them for accuracy and accuracy of the information and correctness of spelling and grammar. Oh gosh, how many times I have read through, and then lo and behold, someone finds the typo that has slipped through there. Now, I think this is a great idea for involvement of some of our inactive or reserve members who still want to be involved, but aren't able to make it to the meetings. You might have one who is excellent at being the spelling and grammar police. And that person I asked to do a review of those minutes. Not only does it help me with the accuracy, but it allows that person to feel like a participant and feel better about themselves and being involved with their chapter. It's also a courtesy and appropriate for the president to review those minutes before distribution. I really encourage you to do that distribution before the meeting. There's several reasons for that. Getting them out as soon as possible allows your members to have that current information. Those who could not be there are brought up to date on what's occurring in your chapter. And you are not spending time at your meeting reading those minutes. If you have them, people read them to themselves at the meeting, they tend to skim through and not really take in that information. And if we read them out loud, it only delays the more important parts of our meeting. So I really encourage you in this time of electronic communication to get those out. At the meeting, the president will refer to the minutes. She can refer to them as read, as distributed, etc., and ask, are there any corrections? Don't need to ask if there are any additions or corrections, because if there's an addition, that's a correction. So according to good old Roberts, we're told just ask if there are any corrections. Then the president can say if there are no corrections, or could say if there are no further corrections, the minutes are approved as read or approved as distributed. And note, a motion is not needed for this. She can simply make that notation. Now, if there are no corrections, this is something new I learned. The corrections are on those original minutes, not noted in the next minutes that you write from that meeting. You can note that they were approved as corrected, but that correction goes on the actual writing of those minutes from the month before or meeting before, and then note the date of approval of the minutes with the secretary's signature. And finally, you do record the disposition of the previous meeting minutes. The meeting of the June 4th, 2024 meeting were approved or were corrected and approved. Yeah, I did note there were a whole lot of the to-dos that I showed you earlier. And is that really necessary? Well, yes, because there may be chapter business that will need to be researched and reviewed in the future. I think one of our more dramatic ones is that in 2023, through a major bequest from Jane and Dorman Stein, the Jane Brundage Stein Scholarship Grant was established for education and nursing students at The Ohio State University Marion Branch and was awarded this spring. Now, to receive this bequest, OSO and ADSOEF followed a legal maze through membership lists, minutes of a chapter merger, and then chapter dissolution, OSO minutes, and legal representation. And they won out over Ohio State University in receiving this bequest. Now, we don't often face that big of need to go back to our minutes, but there are often times that is needed for other points that are not of the magnitude of that. But minutes are a legal document and they are important. Usually the treasurer's report comes next, and in your minutes, record the revenue, expenses, and net income to date, as reported by your treasurer. She can provide that to you in a written report, or you can ask her for it so you aren't scrambling to write down all those numbers. As they're coming at me orally, it's like I can't get them all down correctly. So just ask her for that help. She can do that for you. And then having that in your minutes means that there's a legal recording of the chapter finances, and the chapter financial status is known by the members. Now, as reports are made, summarize only the main points, not the details. Reports may be filed with the minutes if there is so much information or business that it needs to be recorded. That doesn't happen very often, but if it's appropriate, please do that. Here's another helpful hint. Record the full name and title of officers and committee chairmen who present reports. If minutes need to be reviewed in future years, that reader may not know who Betty was. Give her full name and the title if there is one, so it's easier to understand and so that we know, and would also stand up if we have to go through business proceedings with this. If it is during this part of the meeting that motions are likely to be made. Our parliamentarian spoke earlier on making motions and amendments to motions. I want to emphasize the importance of using the motion form. This is also in the printed material, and I even left a blank you could fill in the name of your chapter. There's 2 on the page, so you can cut them apart, you can print them. And I bet you're saying, oh, we're just a small chapter. We're not that formal. But let me tell you, it can be so helpful to you as the secretary, to the president who needs to announce, say what that motion is, but also to the maker of that motion. Haven't we all been in a meeting when somebody goes, I move that we, and gives you part of it, and then no, I think we should, and it gets so convoluted, you may not know what it is. I can tell you that in my own chapter at a recent meeting, first of all, we didn't get that motion. We got the person talking about all this background and wanting people to decide what her motion should be. We ask and ask, what is your motion? And finally, very exasperated, but we came up with a motion that could be stated. I wasn't successful in getting her to use the motion form, but it would have been so nice to have had that. And once we start writing down, I move to, and who is going to do what, by when, or by how much money, or how much, to what extent, it forces more complete thoughts and more consideration for this. You will find life is so much easier for all of you. Now, we heard this morning, don't spring things on your president at the last moment. So if you're thinking about this, have these available, and person can have it already written out. But there will be times it comes up during your meetings. But it will make everyone's life so much easier if we begin using the motion forms, even for our smaller meetings. And then you can record on the form. And then in the minutes, if the motion was adopted or was lost. If there is something that is controversial enough that you're going to have a standing or hand raised vote, you need to count those. And then you can simply indicate on there the numbers. So you've got that as well. And here is another helpful hint that when you type up or write your minutes, I'm looking for the one of the table is not the best place to do this, but we're making it work. I think you can see that in bolded, I have written motion.
Yeah.
Here in bold. Now, you could also underline it. If it's a handwritten, you can underline it or highlight it. And that is where you record what that exact motion is, and then you can also indicate the the maker of the motion, etc. And by the way, you only need to record the name of who made the motion. You do not need to record. In fact, once again, good old Robert says, don't put down the name of who has seconded the motion, but it will be there. But the reason to do this is if you have to go back through old minutes to look up previous motions, this will stand out. You don't have to read all of this to find the motion. You can see where it says motion. Another helpful hint is develop a separate listing on paper and or electronically of motions so that you have those available just to look at and see what those motions are. That can be very, very helpful. Now, record the name and topic of a guest speaker, but not the remarks. You can see on my sample minutes that the program chairman, Louise Little, announced the next meeting and that there being no further business, the meeting was adjourned at a particular time with dinner following, and then the program, and I called it Cycling Adventures Across Nebraska, presented by, and gave the name of the people. And that was it. Kathy, you're laughing. That was that was our opening program this year, and it was fabulous. But anyway, we did not go into their ordeals, their triumphs, the great things that happened on that trip. It was just, that's what it was. Now, use a separate paragraph for each item of business. And depending on the meeting and the business that's being dealt with, you can even use a bullet format where you simply bullet the various actions that or information that's being presented. That's perfectly all right. In the final paragraph, note the time the meeting is adjourned. It's not necessary to have a motion to adjourn. And if there is a motion to adjourn, you don't need to list the maker of that motion. Just be noted that there being no further business, the meeting was adjourned at, and give the time. Now, I admit I'm pretty good at getting the starting time. I tend to have a problem remembering to put that adjournment time. At the state level, I'm really lucky that Karen Dombrowski usually has noted that, and I check with her and we'll get it. But anyway, it is advised that we are to have the adjournment time. Now, your next job is to prepare the minutes promptly after the meeting. Don't wait until the night before the next meeting. You're not going to remember some things. You're going to rush through doing it. You don't have time for others to review that information, and you don't have time to get it out to your members to have seen before the meeting. Do it while that information is fresh. Do it promptly so that your readers and president can review that information while it's still current with them, and also do it promptly so that it can be distributed to members with current information. Members who were at the meeting can review what occurred, and members who were not at the meeting can be informed of the business of the chapter, which keeps all members aware and up to date on happenings. Electronic communication means that we can distribute things so easily to our members without the cost of mailing, which was the only way we could communicate when Delta Kappa Gamma was established. We're no longer dependent on that. And you can do this as a separate mailing, which Kathy does for us at the state level through Constant Contact, and that you could do through Constant Contact or through email with your members. And I really don't want to talk about my chapter does so-and-so, but my chapter this year decided that, and we have a monthly newsletter, and it was decided that a copy of the minutes and the treasurer's report will be included on the next newsletter that goes out. So that will be in less than 1 month's time from the date of the meeting. And that means they're getting this information pretty promptly, and it also keeps us on our toes for doing that. Oh dear, my notes are all messed up. Okay, I found the next page. When you have completed the minutes and are ready to submit them, do not include the words respectfully submitted. Ladies, we no longer show up in our white gloves for the meetings, and we no longer conclude with respectfully submit. Just list your name as secretary and provide a line for your signature. You may, if you wish, also have a line for the president to sign after the minutes are approved. However, you don't have to. What is necessary is that the secretary or the secretary pro tem has signed them. And when you sign them, also note the date of approval. Now, you already know that I have my Roberts with me, being the parliamentary nerd that I'm on my way to. But in my treasure chest, I also have my booklet. It's very lightweight, rather flimsy, but in it, I have the bylaws of the Ohio State Organization, the standing rules of Ohio State Organization, the Constitution of Delta Kappa Gamma Society International, there's international standing rules, the handbook of the DKG Society International that we talked about earlier, and my own chapter standing rules. And those at the chapter level are very important, but there are times we also want to refer back to some of those other things to see if we're really complying with what we need to do. So for me, it was just easier to put it all in this one particular book. You'll want a copy of your previous minutes, certainly of your current biennium, but because we're beginning a new biennium, I think you'll also want copies from the previous biennium because that is helpful as well. Extra motion forms. We've already talked about motion forms. And I always make sure I have several pens, pencils, a highlighter, Post-it notes, paper clips, even a small stapler. Just to be sure I have all that I need. Concerned about the do's and don'ts? Well, check your notes. I will tell you when I wrote up this sample of a pretend meeting with Omega chapter meeting, I then went through that list of the do's and don'ts just to make sure I had them there. And you can check notes that you have made, look these materials over, and really you may call or email with questions. Know you can do it. I know that you are capable of that. And if you'd only been at our meeting on Tuesday, you could have received this great bookmark. You are capable of amazing things. And overall, just remember that whatever you do it with the confidence of a 4-year-old in his Batman cape, because you can do it. Are there any questions?
Meyer, you have one that's in the chat box
Oh.
of questions, so you might want to check there.
Oh, why don't you tell me what it is?
It's from Sandy Lingo.
Oh,
And
Sandy, are you putting me to trial here? Okay.
it says, you mentioned that if there is a secretary pro tem, she has to be approved. Does that approval happen at the beginning of the meeting? And then there's
Yes.
another question.
Yes, Sandy, and that is a good question. As you begin the meeting, as president, you could say that our secretary, Betty Jones, is unable to be with us today. And just ask for approval of the other person as secretary pro tem.
Okay, her other question, Meyer, is you said that the chapter's financial standing should be included in the minutes. If the treasurer's report is attached to the minutes, does that satisfy that requirement?
Yes, I think it would, but it is also nice to note that because sometimes people don't want to wade through a treasurer's report.
So Meyer, hello, how are you?
Hi there, Sandy.
As far as that approval, is it just you say, do we approve?
Just an
and everybody just
approval.
raises their hand and-
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, it does not require a formal motion.
Okay.
But
And if you feel that that's a little bulky to have the, to count on the whole treasurer's report, exactly what is the minimum that needs to go in the minutes of the treasurer's report?
it is what I noted on the duties of the
Okay,
Delta Kappa Gamma
so now you're
Secretary.
testing me, is that what you're saying?
Record revenue, expenses, and net income. And
Net income and what
I'm sorry, revenue,
for that month?
yes, or it can be for where you are for the year.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And this recommendation comes from our treasurer,
Okay,
Diana.
thank you.
All right.
I have a question. Carmel Jenkins, Delta Theta.
Okay.
I know that we have chapter rules. Do chapters have standing rules as well? And what would the difference be?
I think you have, maybe I should refer to Joyce, but I think your chapter rules are what you function under.
Yes.
They're called standing rules.
Actually, no, they're not. They're simply called chapter rules. We have the Constitution and the international standing rules, and then we have the state bylaws, and they now have standing rules. But on the chapter level, they're simply called chapter rules.
Thank you. That's what I
Okay.
thought.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Meyer.
No, I'm very glad to hear that. And I just noted that on in my booklet here, because I know we're going to be doing some revisions. So I've already got that noted.
Thank you.
Anything further? Okay. And that, is
all right.
that a question?
No, it is not. I thought that you had concluded, Meyer.
Yes, just on a personal note, during the time we took our break, I found out that my daughter is arriving in town this afternoon, and that ding you heard was that she's on board and is ETA is 340. So yay. Sandy Lingo was her 6th grade teacher who encouraged her to go to space camp. And I think most of you know that she's now flying high as a Delta captain.
That is wonderful. Well, I know that you will want to get ready as soon as you can, once we are concluded, so that you can greet her and spend as much quality time as you can with her.
Yes,
always a
and
treat.
I have the girls, the granddaughters here as well.
Oh, that is wonderful. I know
Sweet.
you're enjoying that.
Yes, enough personal, but sometimes you got to do that. Thank you all for listening.
So nice. We thank you, OSO Recording Secretary Maya Bauer, for sharing us why it's important for us to keep a secure record of the adventures that we are having. So we thank you for that. I just want